Hello and welcome to the Fummins build part 4. So in this build we were trying to build essentially the ultimate tow rig. We've had kind of a lot of bad luck with used diesel trucks and there's not really any good option in the $15,000 to $20,000 price range. So essentially we're going to try to build our own. So we've got this blown up 2009 6.4 Ford F350 dually, and we are taking this Common Rail Cummins and putting it in it. So we got this Common Rail Cummins out of a 2005 Dodge Ram 2500 parts truck. So we pulled it and everything else we needed out of that truck. We've been tearing apart this truck, which we've got it mostly apart, but we've come to a point where we need to go the long way around, pull the trans, the up pipes, the turbos, etc., to get the engine out without taking the cab off, or we can take the cab off. So after weighing the pros and cons, it seems like pulling the cab off is going to be our best option. The most difficult part of it is probably going to be getting it in the shop. We have a decent sized shop, but that's a big truck. So this is essentially the start of the cab, and that would be the front of the truck being really close to the door if we brought it in backwards, which would be easier. Or we can put it in the other way. After mulling it over, it seems like bringing it in forward is gonna be the better option. That way, once the cab is lifted, we can push the chassis back out of the door, work on it, and then when we need to close up at night, push it back in to keep us from cramping up the shop too much up in this area. So all we need to do now is move it.
Like a plastic piece.
Woo! Not bad. That really wasn't that bad.
Not smart.
Ben saved the day twice. That was all Ben's idea, both routes. So we went, I was thinking we'd have to do like a 6-point turn, but we just went out to the front yard. We have a pretty big front yard and just whooped around, didn't have any issues. Last time we pulled this thing when we got it over here from the front yard was a nightmare. We had to pull it uphill, tires were spinning, we had to use both trucks. Yeah, anyway, it is in the shop. It really isn't that bad either. I mean, it's a big thing. Oh, that's interesting. It will have to be outside the door to get the cab off. So we've already done a good amount of the work required to pull the cab, things like disconnecting the radiator, the charge piping and stuff. Obviously we took all that stuff out because we're gonna be replacing some of it and yada yada. But anyway, we've done most of the work. So I think things that we have left, steering shaft, we gotta pull the brake master cylinder, we gotta pull some more AC lines, but we've already emptied the system, a few wiring connectors, which I think are these guys right here, and a handful of other things, and then the cab bolts. So hopefully it goes pretty quick and we can get this thing up in the air here shortly. So let's get into it. All right, I've just been plugging away under here, and I think I've got everything disconnected. We've got the brake master cylinder off, we've got our hydro boost lines unhooked because that whole assembly is gonna go up with the cab. We've got our starter power wire pulled off of here, draped over the engine right there. Power steering pump is on, but the lines are disconnected in the reservoir and the cooler. All that will go up with the cab. Got the e-brake cable disconnected, trans-shift cable disconnected. As far as everything I know, we're good to go. We're ready to pull this thing off. So what we're gonna do now is undo the cab bolts, get this thing into position on the lift, and start lifting and figure out what we forgot to disconnect. Alrighty, so we ran into a slight problem with the cab bolts. I was, under this truck, there's basically no rust at all. Super mint and clean under there. None of the bolts have corrosion, so I was like, oh, this is gonna be a breeze, man. This is gonna be cake. Well, so instead of having like a welded nut, they have this thing called a cage nut. Let me see if I can get you some light. You can't really see it, but anyway, it's a nut, and then there's 2 little metal tabs that are supposed to hold it from spinning while you take the bolt out. Well, 4 out of the 8 of mine spun, so I got one of them out. They're not too bad to get to. Pretty much just have to. There's that front one that we need to get out, which obviously is relatively easy to get to. And the rest, we got to come in here, pull the carpet up, pull this plug out, and then we can get down to the nut from the top side. So, I mean, really not that bad. I thought it would be more difficult than this, and I started tearing into it. It wasn't too terrible. Got Ben here to help me hold the nuts from the top side while I get the rest of the bolts out, and then we can start lifting the cab off and see what happens. I don't think it needs much.
Yeah. Can you find out what size it is?
You can't get a socket on there. I tried that yesterday, and it was like 1 inch was too big. 24 is a little too big, but it works. You can't get an adjustable down there. This one's like the worst one. The other ones are harder to get to because they're inside, but at least like when you pull the plug, you can get straight on top of it.
so happy when I have a tool Taylor doesn't.
One down, two to go? Two to go.
Sorry, guys.
We got them all out pretty easily. Only issue really was the socket getting stuck to this one back here. So the body mount is down there, so there's a little plug basically behind the seat, but the opening was really small, so big impact sockets didn't want to fit, but of course they don't have sockets that big that aren't impact sockets, so one of them things. Anyway, now we get to try to lift the cab off and see what happens. All right, now, since the front of the truck is staying on, all of this is staying on, and the hood and everything, there's gonna be a lot of weight on the front, so we're gonna ratchet strap basically the back of the truck running board there to the lift arm, just to be safe. Okay, 1 second. Oh, I just gotta unplug these harnesses. Said not to forget them. What did I do? Forgot them. All right. Let me check. Let me just do a quick check on these. Just to make sure we're good down there. These are off. That's clear. All right.
Really pretty easy.
Right? Oh, hold on.
Obviously, it's really easy to me. I didn't do any of the work.
But I mean,
It looked pretty easy.
it was not bad at all. Especially because I had a lot of the work done, you know, to pull the engine Look at that, dude! It's not gonna stop the water. You can go as far as you can. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's
Look at that, dude!
That's pretty wild.
That is wild, isn't it? This is kind of exciting, guys. This is my first time ever pulling the cab off a truck. Would you look at, man, that is so cool. I mean, no casualties. We didn't forget, oh, I forgot one thing, fog light wiring, which I knew about. Yeah, which I didn't realize I needed to disconnect that. I thought it was fine where it was. Man, all right, well, I'm gonna get this stuff cleaned up and secured, and then we'll start diving into pulling the engine out, but it should be a whole hell of a lot easier now. I mean, getting to the trans bolts and stuff, all we gotta do is friggin' brap. Oh man, I'm hyped. I'm really glad I chose to do it this way. Really wasn't bad. I mean, these trucks are definitely designed for this. You know, they know you can't really work on it with the cab on, so they make it really easy to pull the cab off, which, I mean, proof's in the pudding, right? Never done it before, only forgot one thing, so not bad at all. It's really handy that all of this stuff comes up too, you know, this whole upper frame, the fenders, the headlights, AC lines, like all the stuff attached to the firewall really makes it simple. And then it's just these three plugs that unplug basically the body harness from the chassis harness. Unplug those three plugs, starter wire, done. So right now I'm just kind of going through the chassis while I can get to everything and just making a list of everything that needs to be replaced. We need to replace this guy. Steering box needs to be replaced, which is interesting because it's already been replaced. It's remanufactured right there, but it has a ton of slop. Steering stabilizer, front shocks, probably rear shocks, and yeah, anyway, just kind of looking through it. But now it's time to move on to pulling the engine out. So we just gotta start unhooking stuff, torque converter bolts, bell housing bolts. We need to pull this off, I believe. It looks like it. Motor mount bolts, kind of a final check, and then yank her out. So let's get to work. All right, so I tried to turn the motor over by hand and no luck at all. There's not really a good spot to pry on. There's no inspection cover at the bottom to grab the teeth on the flywheel. The crank pulley, you can't really get anything in there, but it seems like it might be seized. So what we're gonna do is hook power up to the starter, try to spin the starter over and see what happens. There we go.
Good turn.
Did it turn?
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, well, that's how we'll do it. That's good. Crisis averted. Success. All right, with the torque converter bolts out of the way, we can move on to the bell housing bolts, the starter bolts. It looks like we're gonna need to pull, oh God. We're gonna need to pull at least this downpipe off because we need to bring the engine up probably about 6 inches, and there's not a lot of room for this thing to go up. So yeah, just gonna start taking everything off. Very weird taking trans bolts off while sitting on top of the trans. It's an abnormal feeling. That was easy. Easy. It's probably the easiest to disconnect, quick disconnects I've ever disconnected. Say that 5 times fast. Alrighty, well, we got the motor mount bolts undone. This one was the only one that had bolts. That other one did not have bolts. Whoever did this engine swap did a pretty shoddy job just from my experience with this truck so far. For example, torque converter bolts, I kept trying different sockets, 14, 15. It was like 15 was a little too big, 14 was a little too small. Turns out they were all just rounded off. But no complaints at all. For what it was, it all came off like really easy. Like, it has been super smooth sailing. I should not say that. Okay. Anyway, I believe we're ready to pull the engine out. So now I got to hook the chain up. We're going to have to push it back some so we have room to come back with the engine hoist and start yanking her out. Hold on. We should probably stop before the lip. Over the lip. And then I'll pull the bumper off.
Well, the only thing is too is once the engine's out, I'm sure it'll be a lot easier to push.
Yeah, that's true. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the bumper off. That way.
You need to replace it anyway.
Yeah, and then that way I can bring the hoist in further and keep the arm short.
You got it coming.
Yeah. I wonder what this weighs compared to the Cummins, because it seems heavier by how much it's.
Yeah. Definitely seems heavy.
Look at that! Engine is out! Wow, that's exciting. Engine is out. That was really no problem at all. That was cake, man. Obviously, pulling the cab was a big part of that. It's honestly kind of another cool benefit to doing Cummins in a Ford is Ford body designed to be removed so easily. So, you know, if you ever had something major to do, like, it is not hard to just pull the cab right off. Kind of, I see it as an added benefit because the Dodge cab is not meant to just come off with, you know, an hour's worth of work. And that is a big Johnny. Thing is huge. Well, I guess I gotta list this thing for sale. I guess people buy these for cores so they don't have to like send their engine out to be rebuilt, or if they're buying a replacement engine, yada yada. So supposedly people buy them as cores. I'll have to post it up and see if anyone bites or if we just take it to the scrapyard, but we'll find out. Man, I don't even know what to do with myself. It's mid-afternoon, the cab's off, engine's out. Like, wow. Went a lot faster than anticipated. All right, so I need to pull my starter off, and then we'll need to pull all the sensors off that we're gonna need to use in the Cummins. One bolt, man, this is not a good location. All right, got that out. So they give you a schematic which shows you where each sensor is that you need to pull off. Tells you which ones to keep and which components to keep. There's coolant temp, rail pressure, crank sensor. Alrighty, I got all the sensors off except the MAF sensor. I can't find the intake, and I'm like 95% sure it was never there to begin with. I remember noticing that when I went to pull the wiring harness out, that there was no air intake. So I'll have to order one of those, but we got all of our other ones. Got them marked down so we don't forget what we have and what we don't have. So we are done with this engine as far as I know. So push it out of the way and move on. All right, well, our engine is out. We've got everything we need on it. Like I said, I'm gonna probably post this on Marketplace or the 6.4 Facebook pages and just see if anyone's interested in it for really any money. And if not, we'll just scrap it. But yeah, we got that out, that taken apart and ready to go. And we got our cab off. Like I said, it's super exciting because I originally wasn't gonna go this route. And I'm really glad I did because I mean, this is gonna be so nice for test fitting the Cummins and getting everything right and changing stuff like suspension stuff and steering box, things like that are gonna be so easy to get to with the body off the chassis. And it was so easy. I would highly encourage, if you have a lift and you're doing this swap or you're doing anything to a 6.4 Ford major wise, just pull the freaking cab because it is, I mean, it's designed to do so. Really not bad at all. The easiest part of all of this, honestly, was pulling the cab. Funny enough. So yeah, that is where we are at for today. We are unfortunately out of time. The sun is setting. But tomorrow we're going to be test fitting the Cummins. So we're going to get the Cummins set up, get the trans adapter plate on, get it mated to the trans, get the trans moved back. There's another set of holes. So I think it's about 3 inches back, which will require us to shorten that drive shaft and lengthen that drive shaft. So I want to get all that in place, get the Cummins bolted up, motor mounts in and everything, and then figure out our measurements for our drive shaft and everything else we need to figure out. So yeah, moral of the story, Cummins is going in tomorrow, test fit day. I'm really excited about that. That's going to be really cool. We can drop the body down, see our firewall clearance. It's going to be a fun day. So I'll see you guys then. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.